Good evening. My name is Gabrielle Lorenzo, and today I will be giving an oral presentation of human trafficking policy. Human trafficking, often referred to as modern day slavery, is the practice of exploiting people for financial gain by pressure, fraud, or force. Domestic servitude, sex trafficking, and labor trafficking are just a few of the various forms it can take. Despite the abundance of resources illustrating the stress and brutality victims endure, the impact of human trafficking on one's health is typically overlooked. These health impacts can occur before recruitment, throughout exploitation, and even after rescue, causing psychological, sexual, and physical pain. There are currently 49.6 million people trapped in modern day slavery globally, and 12 million of those victims are children. With 150 billion in profits, human trafficking is the second most lucrative illicit sector in the United States. By establishing the three P's, which is prosecution, prevention, and protection, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 and its reauthorizations have played a crucial role in the fight against human trafficking in the United States. Nevertheless, these policies continue to fall short in addressing the health and victims of human trafficking. Through the development of T-Visa, which permits victims to remain in the United States and cooperate with investigations, the TVPA has improved the legal instruments available for trafficker prosecutions and offered protection for victims. Addressing the health issues of victims of human trafficking requires a combination of interagency cooperation, trauma-informed care, training for healthcare professionals, public awareness campaigns, and policy and legislative changes. By assisting in victim identification and support, these actions can guarantee that victims receive all encompassing care and protection. Continuous efforts are also required to modify tactics to counteract changing trafficking networks and offer victims support consistently. The legal and protective frameworks against human trafficking have made great progress, but to guarantee victims' recovery and prevent re-trafficking, attention must be given immediately to their health and well-being. And here is the context and the importance of the problem. There are several resources that inform the public about human trafficking and highlight the everyday abuse and trauma that victims endure. Little focus is placed on the health of individuals who are trafficked. The health risk and consequences linked to human trafficking might begin prior to the victim's recruitment, persist throughout the exploitation period, and even persist after the victim has been rescued. The health effects revolving human trafficking are often overlooked in favor of a narrow focus on crimes committed during the exploitation stage in research, regulation, and service delivery. Being a victim of human trafficking can cause psychological, sexual, and bodily suffering. Legal restrictions, obstacles associated with stigma or marginalization, and occupational dangers may also affect victims. To effectively address the health concerns of victims of human trafficking, policymakers must act into promoting protection and recovery of the people trafficking. The causes of overlooking health in human trafficking is lack of public awareness, stigma and secrecy, misidentification, trafficker control, language barriers, and cultural differences, and fear of authorities. The effects of overlooking health in human trafficking victims is untreated physical health issues, severe mental health impacts, delayed recovery, and increased vulnerability to re-trafficking. Next, I will talk about the pre-existing policies, policy options, and research. The first federal statute designed to combat human trafficking in the United States was the TVPA. This act made human trafficking a federal offense with severe penalties for offenders. Prior to TVPA, the United States did not have a comprehensive statute that expressively addressed the growing problem of human trafficking both locally and internationally. The United States Constitution's 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865, made slavery and involuntary marriage illegal. However, there were limited criminal statutes that did not adequately address the extent of contemporary human trafficking. In 1998, the U.S. government was instructed to step up efforts to combat human trafficking by an executive order issued by President Bill Clinton. Unfortunately, executive orders are not effective due to courts annulling executive orders due to it being unconstitutional. Executive orders could be repealed by a new administration, or Congress can sanction presidents. Also, women's issues in global arena were the focus of a series of conferences in 1975 prior to the TVPA. And this was known as the Decade for Women, where they shared their experiences of oppression worldwide. During this time, increased focus on women's rights and a more global perspective on the rise of transnational organized crime were hallmarks of the Decade for Women. As transnational organized crime increased, the United States was required to establish a legal framework to combat human trafficking, and nations had to collaborate to develop a call to action because the majority of these nations lacked the laws and alliances necessary to impose consequences. First, the United States established a precise federal definition of human trafficking that made a distinction between labor trafficking and sex trafficking. It acknowledged that both foreign and U.S. nationals may be impacted by trafficking, which can happen without crossing international borders. Second, the TVPA was created by the State Department's Office to monitor and combat trafficking in persons, which oversees organizing anti-trafficking activities and creating the annual Trafficking in Persons report. Third, by establishing new criminal offensive and harsher penalties for traffickers, the TVPA improved the tools available for prosecution. This included making attempts at trafficking illegal and requiring victims to make reparations. Lastly, the Act addressed victim assistance and protection. It made provisions for the creation of a T visa, which permits trafficking victims to stay in the United States and aid in the investigation and prosecution of trafficking-related crimes. Additionally, it guaranteed victims access to health, legal, and social services. Efforts to combat human trafficking have been significantly impacted by the TVPA passage and extension. Increased trafficker prosecutions and improved victim safeguards are results of the TVPA. Additionally, it has brought attention to the realities of human trafficking, which has led to similar legislation measures in other nations. Despite the TVPA's achievements, there are still issues like trafficking networks changing, victims not receiving enough care, and ignorance. As trafficking networks have grown more complex, they now take advantage of victims by economic inequality and technology. It is imperative to continuously modify strategies to fight these efforts. Victims also require ongoing assistance, including social, medical, and legal services. Due to a lack of resources and training, law enforcement, service providers, and even victims themselves cannot be aware of human trafficking. To increase their awareness and comprehension of human trafficking, law enforcement organizations can employ several strategies, which I will go over in this presentation. In conclusion, human trafficking continues to be a horrendous crime that causes victims to suffer from significant physical, psychological, and emotional trauma. Even with the substantial legislative advancements brought about by the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and its reauthorizations, the health effects that trafficking victims experience must be addressed. The overall fight against human trafficking will be strengthened, and victim outcomes will be improved by comprehensive strategies that incorporates health considerations into anti-trafficking initiatives to provide a supportive atmosphere that prioritizes the healing and well-being of trafficking. Survivors, legislators, medical professionals, law enforcement, and the community must cooperate. Implementing strategies such as public awareness campaigns, providing healthcare professionals specialized training, implementing trauma and care practices, encouraging agency collaboration, and pushing for legislative changes that put victims' health first are crucial to combating human trafficking. Now I will talk about the policy recommendations. The first step in improving the entire response to human trafficking and treating the health issues of victims is to launch public awareness programs regarding the warning indicators of human trafficking and the significance of reporting suspected cases. The benefits of this policy are increasing the number of cases that are discovered and reported to authorities by teaching the public about the warning signs of human trafficking and educating people about trafficker strategies to assist them and avoid exploitation and discouraging potential traffickers by raising the likelihood of detection and prosecution. This policy will also decrease stigma, promote a more encouraging atmosphere for victims who need assistance, and educate victims about the resources and services that are available to aid in their rehabilitation and reintegration. Additionally, training programs that give medical professionals the ability and information to recognize and assist victims of human trafficking will be essential to the larger endeavor to end human trafficking and assist in the victims' protection and rehabilitation. Human trafficking victims who might otherwise go unnoticed can be identified early thanks to trained medical professionals who can identify the signs and indicators of the crime. These professionals can also respond appropriately and sensitively to victims of human trafficking, ensuring they receive the care and support they require without adding to their trauma. Training will involve knowledge of trauma-informed care approaches, which assist healthcare professionals in providing victims with effective, compassionate care that recognizes the complexity of their trauma. By putting victims in touch with specialized services like social assistance, legal aid, and mental health support, healthcare providers can help them recover. This policy will assist on building trust between victims and providers to increase the likelihood that victims would disclose their circumstances and accept assistance. Training guarantees that medical professionals understand their ethical and legal obligations, such as compulsory reporting and patient confidentiality, which are essential for managing cases of human trafficking. By working efficiently with law enforcement and other organizations, trained providers may guarantee a coordinated response that puts victims' safety and well-being first. To provide survivor support, we must promote interagency collaboration. Agencies can address all of the survivors' needs by collaborating to offer a comprehensive range of services such as housing, employment, mental health support, legal aid, and medical treatment. This policy will help us to detect and connect with possible victims of human trafficking more effectively with the assistance of organizations like law enforcement, medical facilities, and social agencies, and nonprofit organizations, and they can exchange data and resources. Interagency collaboration can improve survivors' safety and protection by preventing re-trafficking and meeting their short and long-term security needs. Organizations can combine funds, resources, and experience to offer more thorough and efficient support services, guaranteeing that survivors receive the most care and aid available. Leveraging the combined voice and power of several groups, cooperative initiatives can result in increased advocacy for legislative improvements and policy reforms to support trafficking survivors and stop trafficking. Better case management is made possible through interagency collaboration, where agencies collaborate to develop and implement personalized care plans for each survivor, guaranteeing continuous and reliable support. Interagency collaboration strengthens, integrates, and improves the effectiveness of the support network for victims of human trafficking, which in turn improves the lives of individuals impacted by trafficking. By implementing these policy recommendations, we may develop a more thorough and effective response to human trafficking that puts victims' health and rehabilitation first, ultimately aiding in the eradication of this horrible crime. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening and hope you're having a great night, day. Thank you. Happy holidays.